The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, ominous shadows across the barren landscape. Skinwalker Ranch. A place whispered about in hushed tones, a breeding ground for fear and the unknown. Dust devils danced in the distance, their swirling forms mimicking the unease creeping into my gut. This place had a vibe, a palpable sense of something sinister lurking beneath the surface. I could feel the sweat trickling down my spine, a mix of anticipation and dread clinging to me like a second skin. The air, thick with the smell of sagebrush and danger, crackled with an unseen energy. We were here, 5 friends on a quest for thrills, for a taste of the paranormal. Cameras in hand, we were ready to capture whatever lurked in the shadows. We were so naive. Laughter echoed through the dry air as we unloaded the truck, our voices a jarring contrast to the unsettling silence of the desert. We were young, invincible, or so we thought. John, our fearless leader, slapped me on the back, his grin infectious. "Ready for a night we'll never forget?" he boomed, his voice laced with excitement. I forced a smile, trying to ignore the shiver that ran down my spine. We were about to find out just how unforgettable this night would be. Our excitement was palpable, fueled by adrenaline and a healthy dose of fear. This was Skinwalker Ranch, a place steeped in legend, a hotbed of paranormal activity. We'd heard the stories, tales of strange creatures, unexplained lights, and a darkness that clung to the soul. We were here to document it all, to capture the truth behind the myths. As darkness enveloped the ranch, a hush fell over the group. The wind, which had been whipping around us earlier, died down as if holding its breath. Even the crickets, usually a constant presence in the desert night, were silent. The silence was deafening, amplifying every rustle of leaves, every crackle of static from our walkie-talkies. John's earlier enthusiasm seemed to have waned, replaced by a furrowed brow and a nervous glance over his shoulder. "Did you feel that?" he muttered, his voice barely a whisper, like we're being watched. I nodded, unable to shake the feeling that we were not alone. The desert, usually teeming with life, felt empty, devoid of everything except an oppressive sense of dread. The air grew thick with tension, each of us acutely aware of the growing unease. Our laughter died down, replaced by hushed whispers and nervous glances over our shoulders. The darkness felt heavier here, more oppressive, as if it were a living, breathing entity. We pressed on, our bravado slowly crumbling under the weight of the unseen eyes that seemed to follow our every move. Every gust of wind sent shivers down our spines. Every creak of a branch sounded like footsteps approaching in the darkness. We tried to rationalize our fear, to attribute the strange occurrences to our overactive imaginations, but deep inside, a primal instinct screamed at us to run. "This is getting creepy, even for me," Mark muttered, his voice tight with apprehension. Mark, our resident skeptic, was usually the first to dismiss anything paranormal. His unease only served to amplify our own. We were supposed to be documenting the paranormal, not becoming victims of it. The silence, once unnerving, was now broken by a series of unsettling sounds. Faint whispers seemed to emanate from the darkness beyond our flashlight's reach, whispers in languages we couldn't understand. They swirled around us, taunting us, mocking our fear. We spun around, trying to pinpoint the source, but the whispers seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Who's there?" John called out, his voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in his hand that betrayed his fear. The only response was the rustling of leaves and the echo of his own voice swallowed by the vastness of the desert. Our eyes darted around frantically, searching for any sign of movement, any indication that we weren't alone. The whispers grew louder, closer, morphing into guttural growls that sent chills down our spines. We huddled closer, our flashlights forming a trembling circle of light against the encroaching darkness. Fear, raw and primal, tightened its grip on our chest, making it difficult to breathe. As if the whispers weren't enough, the desert around us came alive with unexplained phenomena. Strange lights danced on the horizon, flickering in and out of existence like ghostly apparitions. They pulsed with an eerie green glow, casting grotesque shadows that stretched and contorted, appearing to writhe with their own sinister life. The temperature plummeted, a sudden, bone-chilling cold that cut through our jackets and sent goosebumps erupting across our skin. Our breath appeared in ragged puffs of white, dissipating into the darkness like spectral sighs. The air itself felt charged, electric, as if a storm was brewing just beyond our perception. "This is insane," Emily whimpered, her voice trembling. "We need to get out of here." Her words were met with nods of agreement. Our initial excitement had evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard terror that settled deep in our guts. We were in over our heads, and we all knew it. As if sensing our fear, our equipment chose that moment to malfunction. The walkie-talkies crackled one last time before falling silent. John fiddled with the dials, but only dead air responded. We were cut off, isolated, alone in the darkness. The cameras began to flicker erratically. Distorted images, twisted figures lurked beyond the lens. Were they real or tricks of the light? We couldn't be sure, and that gnawed at our sanity. "What the hell is going on?" Mike stammered. He fumbled with his camera, trying to steady the footage. The batteries drained rapidly, flashing warnings. We were stranded, trapped in a nightmare. And then it happened. A blood-curdling scream, raw and filled with unimaginable terror, shattered the night. It ripped through the silence, echoing off the canyons, bouncing around us like a malevolent entity. The sound seemed to claw at our eardrums, digging its way into our very souls. We froze, our blood turning to ice in our veins. The scream was followed by an eerie silence, a silence even more terrifying than the screams themselves. Our hearts hammered against our ribs like trapped birds, our breath catching in our throats. The air hung heavy, thick with the stench of fear and something else, something metallic, something primal. "Emily!" John choked out, his voice hoarse with terror. "Emily, is that you?" But there was no reply, only the echo of our own ragged breathing and the frantic thumping of our hearts. The chilling realization hit us like a physical blow. Someone was gone, taken. Panic seized us. We fanned out, our flashlights cutting through the darkness, searching desperately for any sign of our missing friend. "Emily, Emily, answer me!" John's voice cracked with desperation, echoing through the canyons. Each rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sent our hearts leaping into our throats. We stumbled over rocks and scrub brush, our fear propelling us forward, but also threatening to cripple us with terror. Where was she? What had taken her? The questions swirled in our minds, fueling our panic. We found her backpack discarded on the ground, its contents scattered around it like fallen leaves. Her camera lay a few feet away, its lens cracked. The last image it captured still displayed on the screen. A distorted, nightmarish figure with glowing red eyes. The image sent a fresh wave of terror washing over us. We were no longer dealing with something explainable. This was something else, something evil. Then in the distance, a flicker of movement. A fleeting glimpse of something unnatural, something that sent a jolt of pure terror through our veins. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, vanishing back into the shadows like a phantom. but we had seen it. A twisted, grotesque parody of a human form, its limbs contorted at unnatural angles, its eyes burning with a malevolent light. "Did you see that?" Mike whispered, his voice trembling. We all had. There was no denying it. We had just witnessed something that defied explanation, something that sent a primal fear coursing through our veins. The Skinwalkers were real, and they were hunting us. We stood there frozen in place, our minds struggling to comprehend the horror we had just witnessed. The image of that creature, its twisted limbs and glowing eyes, was seared into our brains. A cold sweat clung to my skin, and my heart pounded against my ribs like a drumbeat of doom. The silence was broken only by our ragged breaths and the distant howling of coyotes, a sound that now sent shivers down our spines. The air itself seemed to crackle with a malevolent energy, pressing down on us, suffocating us. We were prey, and something dark and ancient was hunting us. "We need to go," Mike whispered, his voice barely audible above the pounding in my ears. He was right. Standing here paralyzed by fear was suicide, but where could we go? The desert stretched out around us, an endless expanse of darkness and unknown terrors. Adrenaline surged through me, snapping me out of my stupor. Survival instinct took over, overriding the paralyzing fear. "Run!" I screamed, my voice raw with terror. And with that, we were off, crashing through the underbrush, our flashlights bouncing erratically, casting grotesque shadows that danced and writhed around us. We didn't have a plan, no destination in mind, just a desperate need to put as much distance between us and that creature as possible. We ran blindly, our lungs burning, our legs screaming for mercy, but we didn't dare slow down. The sound of our own panicked breathing filled our ears, along with the crashing of branches and the clatter of loose stones under our feet. Behind us, we could hear the creature moving, a low growl that seemed to vibrate the very ground beneath our feet. It was toying with us, herding us like sheep, savoring our fear. The thought spurred us on, fueled our desperate flight. The creature was relentless. It moved with unnatural speed and agility, bounding over obstacles, slipping through the underbrush with ease. It was always there, lurking just beyond the reach of our flashlight beams, a constant, terrifying presence. We stumbled and fell, our clothes ripped by thorns, our hands scraped raw against rocks. But we couldn't stop. To stop was to die. The creature's growls grew louder, closer, and we could hear its heavy breathing, a rasping, guttural sound that sent chills down our spines. We were outmatched, outmaneuvered. This wasn't a fair chase. It was a hunt, and we were the prey. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut, stealing my breath, leaving me with nothing but cold, hard fear. A blood-curdling scream pierced the night, stopping us in our tracks. It was John. His voice, filled with terror and pain, echoed through the canyons, sending a fresh wave of horror crashing over us. We spun around, our flashlights scanning the darkness, searching for him. "John, where are you?" Mike shouted, his voice hoarse with fear. But there was no reply, only the sound of John's screams growing fainter as he was dragged away into the darkness. We could hear the creature's growls, closer now, mixed with the sickening sounds of tearing flesh and snapping bones. Then silence, a silence more terrifying than any scream. John was gone, taken. We were too late. The creature had claimed its first victim. And then, as quickly as it had vanished, the creature reappeared. It stood on a small rise, silhouetted against the moonlit sky, its grotesque form illuminated in all its horrifying detail. but it was what it held in its hand that sent a wave of nausea through me. It was John's head. His lifeless eyes stared out at us, his face contorted in a silent scream. The creature held it aloft like a grotesque trophy, a macabre prize. And then it did something truly horrifying. It grinned. The creature's lips peeled back, revealing rows of jagged teeth stained crimson with blood. It was a mockery of a human smile, a grotesque display of triumph. The message was clear. We were next. Despair threatened to consume us. We had witnessed something truly monstrous, something that defied explanation, something that shattered our perception of reality. We were outmatched, outgunned, and utterly terrified. But somewhere, deep down, beneath the fear and despair, a spark of defiance ignited. We had lost John, but we would not let him die in vain. We would survive. We had to. We have to keep moving, Mike whispered, his voice raspy but firm. He was right. Standing here mourning John would only lead to our own deaths. We had to keep running, keep fighting for as long as we could. We owed it to John, and we owed it to ourselves. The creature's laughter, a chilling cacophony of inhuman sounds, echoed after us as we fled, our unity shattered, our survival instincts overriding any sense of loyalty or friendship. We were each alone now, adrift in a sea of darkness, hunted by something ancient and evil. I didn't look back, I couldn't. The memory of John's mangled face, the creature's grotesque grin, fueled my flight. My lungs burned, my legs screamed for mercy, but I pushed on, driven by a primal terror I'd never known. The desert stretched out before me, an endless expanse of shadows and whispers. The moon, a pale disk in the night sky, provided little comfort, casting long, distorted shadows that danced and writhed like phantoms. Every creak of a branch, every rustle of leaves sent my heart leaping into my throat, my mind conjuring images of the creature lurking just beyond my field of vision. I had no idea where I was going, no plan, no hope. The desert, once a place of stark beauty, was now a labyrinth of terror. My flashlight beam, a feeble beacon, darted back and forth, searching for signs of the creature. The silence was as unnerving as the creature's laughter. Gone were the night sounds of the desert, even the wind seemed to hold its breath. I stumbled on, my clothes torn, my body battered. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by bone-deep exhaustion. My vision blurred and I swayed on my feet. I wanted to stop, to rest, but I knew I couldn't. To stop was to surrender, to accept my fate. A low moan, barely audible above the pounding of my own heart, stopped me in my tracks. It was a sound of unimaginable pain, of utter despair. It was Mike. Cautiously I crept forward, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness until I saw it. The sight that greeted me was so horrific, so utterly inhuman, it nearly sent me to my knees. Mike's body lay sprawled on the ground, twisted at an unnatural angle, his limbs contorted in ways they were never meant to bend. His clothes were shredded, his skin flayed, revealing the raw muscle and bone beneath. His face, or what was left of it, was frozen in a silent scream, his eyes wide with terror, his mouth agape as if he had died trying to draw breath. The air reeked of blood, a coppery tang that caught in my throat, choking me. I stumbled back, my stomach churning, bile rising in my throat. I retched, dry heaves racking my body, but nothing came up. I couldn't tear my gaze away from Mike's mangled corpse. This was no animal attack. This was something else, something evil. Panic welled up inside me. I had to get out of there, but my legs felt like lead. I stumbled into a shallow ravine. I collapsed on the rocky ground. I fumbled for my flashlight. It clattered on the rocks, casting shadows on the ravine walls. I lay there, catching my breath, listening for any sound. The silence was broken by a sound that sent a fresh wave of terror through me. It was a low, guttural chuckle coming from somewhere outside the ravine. The creature was close, too close. I held my breath, my heart pounding against my ribs like a drumbeat of doom. Then a rustling sound close by, just outside the mouth of the ravine. I peered through the branches, my blood turning to ice at what I saw. The creature was standing there, its grotesque form illuminated by the moonlight. But it was what it was doing that sent a shiver down my spine. It was shedding its skin. The creature's flesh rippled and bulged, and with a sickening, tearing sound, its skin began to peel away, revealing an even more grotesque form beneath. Its flesh was a sickly grey-green, covered in pulsating veins and oozing sores. Its teeth, longer and sharper than before, glinted in the moonlight. "Looking for me?" a voice called out, chillingly familiar. My blood ran cold. It was Emily's voice, but it couldn't be. Could it? I peered through the branches, my heart pounding in my chest. The creature was holding something up in its hand, something small and limp. As it moved closer, I saw with horror that it was Emily's face. Her eyes, wide and lifeless, stared out at me, her lips frozen in a silent scream. The creature had skinned her, wearing her face like a macabre mask. "We were so close," the creature whispered, its voice a grotesque parody of Emily's. "We almost made it out of here, but you had to run." The creature's laughter echoed through the ravine, a chilling sound that seemed to mock my grief, my terror, my very existence. The creature tossed Emily's face into the ravine. It landed at my feet, her lifeless eyes staring up at me accusingly. I was alone now, the last one left. The weight of my solitude crashed down on me, suffocating me. My friends were gone, butchered by this thing, and I was next. The creature's laughter followed me as I fled, echoing through the canyons, a promise of the torment to come. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs gave out, until I collapsed on the desert floor, utterly broken. But even then, I couldn't escape the chilling truth. I was alone, hunted, and there was nowhere left to run. They surrounded me, creatures of shadow and bone, their laughter echoing through the canyons, each cackle a nail in my sanity. Their forms flickered, grotesque parodies of humans, limbs contorted, eyes burning with hunger. "We've got you now," hissed a voice. It was John's voice, twisted, nowhere left to run. I whirled around, but the voice came from everywhere. "Help me," Emily's voice whispered. "Please don't leave me." The voices swirled, whispers of the damned, each one a knife twisting in my gut, a reminder of my helplessness. Their words, laced with memories, used to break my spirit. I was drowning in terror, dragged down by the ghosts of my friends. They were toying with me, these creatures, herding me like a sheep through the labyrinthine canyons, their laughter echoing across the desolate landscape. They were everywhere and nowhere, flickering in and out of view, their forms shifting, their voices mimicking the pleas and screams of my fallen friends. I ran until my lungs burned, my legs screamed for mercy, but they always stayed one step ahead, their presence a suffocating weight on my chest. The moon, a malevolent eye in the night sky, offered no comfort, casting long, distorted shadows that danced and writhed like the creatures themselves. Come out, wherever you are," a voice sang, a grotesque parody of a child's rhyme. It was Mike's voice, twisted and laced with a mocking glee that sent chills down my spine. I stumbled over a rock, my ankle twisting beneath me, a sharp pain shooting up my leg. I lay there for a moment, gasping for breath, my body screaming in protest. And then through the haze of pain and terror, I saw it. A light. A beacon of hope in the overwhelming darkness. A farmhouse nestled in the distance, its windows glowing with a warm, inviting light. Could it be real? Or was it just another cruel trick, another layer of the nightmare they were weaving around me? Desperation fueled my steps. I limped toward the light, my ankle throbbing with each step, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The closer I got, the stronger the light became, pushing back the shadows, offering a glimmer of hope in the suffocating darkness. I reached the edge of the property, a rickety fence separating me from the house. Hesitation gripped me. Something felt off. The air hung heavy, thick with the smell of damp earth and something else, and something metallic, something primal. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, a primal warning screaming at me to turn back. But it was too late. They were waiting for me. As I reached for the gate latch, a chorus of inhuman shrieks erupted from the shadows surrounding me, cutting off any chance of retreat. Their forms seemed to solidify, their features becoming clearer, more defined, their eyes burning with a malevolent glee. "Welcome home," John's voice hissed, his breath hot on my neck. I spun around, adrenaline surging through my veins, and lashed out with my foot, connecting with something solid. A satisfying crunch echoed through the night, followed by a howl of pain. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed a loose fence post, its wood rough against my palms, and swung it like a club, my fear replaced by a surge of desperate rage. They swarmed me, their claws raking at my flesh, their teeth bared in feral snarls. But I fought back with the fury of a cornered animal. I realized then, with a sickening certainty, that the farmhouse wasn't a haven. It was a trap, a lure. These creatures, they enjoyed toying with their prey, drawing them in with the promise of safety, only to snatch it away at the last moment, reveling in their terror. I was trapped. Skinwalker Ranch wasn't just a place, it was a prison, a hunting ground where these creatures reigned supreme, their power absolute, their hunger insatiable. The air crackled with an unseen energy, a malevolent force that pressed down on me, suffocating me, reminding me that I was nothing more than an insect caught in their web. They circled me, their movements predatory, their eyes glowing with a cold, calculating amusement. They were in no hurry. They knew I had nowhere to go, no hope of escape. They were going to savor this, prolong my suffering, break me before they finished me off. Exhaustion gnawed at my consciousness, my body screaming in protest, my vision blurred, breaths ragged. I was wounded but alive, barely. I gripped the fence post tighter. It was all I had left. I would make them pay for every inch, every breath. This was it, my final stand. Bring it on. I didn't think, I just ran. The fence post lay forgotten in the dirt, useless against this tide of evil. My lungs screamed for air, each breath a searing pain, but I pushed harder, fueled by a primal instinct to survive. The ground flew beneath my feet, a blur of rock and shadow, the farmhouse receding into the darkness behind me. Their laughter, a chorus of inhuman shrieks and guttural growls, echoed after me, spurring me onward. They were toying with me, savoring the chase, prolonging my terror. I could almost feel their hot breath on my neck, the stench of decay, and something else, something ancient and evil washing over me. The moon, a malevolent eye in the night sky, cast long, distorted shadows that reached out like grasping claws, tripping me, trying to drag me down. I stumbled but didn't fall, scrambling back to my feet, driven by a terror that bordered on madness. How long could I keep running? How far could I go before they caught me? The desert stretched before me, an endless expanse of darkness and despair. I had no idea where I was going, no destination in mind, just a desperate need to put as much distance between me and those things as possible. My vision blurred, my legs screamed for mercy, my body on the verge of collapse. And then, through the haze of exhaustion and terror, I saw it. Lights, headlights, a vehicle silhouetted against the horizon, its headlights cutting through the darkness like beacons of hope. Could it be real? Or just another cruel trick, another layer of the nightmare they were weaving around me? Hope, fragile and desperate, surged through me, giving me a burst of energy I didn't know I had left. I staggered towards the lights, my heart pounding in my chest, my throat raw from breathing the dry desert air. Closer now, I could hear the rumble of the engine, a sound that filled me with a sliver of hope. But as the vehicle drew closer, a sense of unease settled over me. Something wasn't right. The vehicle was moving too slowly, its headlights casting flickering shadows. The rumble of the engine morphed into a low, guttural growl. And then, the laughter. It came from inside the vehicle, a chorus of inhuman shrieks. My blood ran cold. It wasn't a rescue, it was them. They had been herding me towards this abomination. My legs turned to lead, my body refusing to obey. I wanted to run, to scream, but I was frozen in place. The laughter intensified, dragging me down into the abyss. This was it, the end. I closed my eyes, surrendering to the darkness.